According to the theory of evolution, the origin and development of the universe and all its systems can be explained solely on the basis of time, chance, and continuing processes. All living things have arisen from a single-celled organism. A second and opposing worldview is the concept of creation. According to the theory of creation, everything in the universe has come into being through the design, purpose, and deliberate acts of a supernatural creator. That means this creator created the universe, the earth, and all life on earth, including all types of plants and animals, as well as humans. On today's edition of Origins, we're in search of intelligent design.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to Origins. It's a delight to have you with us today. I think we're in for a really great show. My friend Ron Rhodes is with us today, and he is one of America's great apologists, and he's decided to write a book on this whole issue of creation versus evolution. This is a book that I would highly recommend. It sort of covers the whole field and yet does it in a very understandable way. So we're blessed to have you.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Now, today we're going to talk about what I think is really the cutting edge of the whole evolution-creation debate, and that's this whole matter of intelligent design.
Yes.
And that really boils down to the word intentionality, doesn't it?
Well, it really does. And I think that the best way to understand how God is involved in intelligently designing our universe is to begin by observing some examples of intelligent design among people.
All right.
And that way we can get a good grasp on the concept itself. Well, you know, many job professions today seek signs or clues for intelligent design or intentionality.
All right.
I've got some firemen here and a policeman and a guard and so forth. But if you just consider, for example, the fireman here. You see this guy on the left? That's a fire investigator who's accompanying these firemen here. Mm-hmm. And that guy wants to find out if that fire was on purpose. You know, for example, did somebody throw a match into the garbage can hoping maybe that the house will burn down and then they can collect an insurance policy on it? You know, that's his job. He wants to find out if it was an intentional thing.
So there are professions where we're trying to find out what happened by accident and what happened by intentionality.
That's exactly right. A crime scene investigator, I'm sure that you've seen CSI.
CSI, that's the big phrase today, yeah.
Yeah, a crime scene investigator will basically rope off the crime area.
Right.
And his goal is to keep people away so that they don't upset the evidence. And so the crime scene investigator goes in there and he starts to get out his magnifying glass and he looks all around. And as an example, he might find himself a hair lying on the ground. Now, is that a great hair or what?
Great hair.
From that one hair, he can actually do a DNA analysis, and that's kind of like a genetic footprint. He can determine who was there and at what time, and thereby, you know, go in large measure towards solving that crime.
So if you're going to commit a crime, don't have blue hair.
Well, yes.
That's the first lesson.
Do you write your own material?
That's right.
That's good.
Okay.
Well, that's one good application you could draw from this. But you can see that he's using a scientific methodology.
That's right.
Towards trying to find out if there was an intelligent design towards this crime scene that he's involved with. Now, yet another example is an insurance investigator. Now, where I'm from in Texas, there's currently in the newspapers a woman who's been reported to have died by drowning. And the reason why the insurance investigators are concerned is that she's got a very large insurance policy. I think it's like $500,000. And it looks a little bit suspicious. They've got some evidence against her husband. And the case has not been solved yet. But This is what an insurance investigator does.
So by looking at the evidence, we'll decide whether it's an accident or whether someone acted with intention.
That's right. And by finding out if it's intentional, that obviously has implications as to whether or not insurance will actually be offered. Now, are you into archaeology?
A little bit. It's
I love archaeology.
fascinating.
In fact,
yes.
I often use archaeology to prove the reliability of the Bible.
That's right.
But I'd like to show you something up on the board, if I could, related to our discussion. And that is that, an archaeologist will do digs and uncover some ancient ruins, and some discoveries actually show the evidence of intelligent design in our world. Now, Don, let me ask you a question. If you walk into a cave and you see something like this scribbled on the side of the wall, what do you think you're going to conclude about intentionality?
Not very much.
Not very much. I mean, it's just a scratch on the wall,
That's right. Anything could have done that.
But by contrast, let's say that you walk into a cave and you see the following.
My first conclusion is that that didn't happen by chance. Someone had to write that.
Someone had to write that. And do you recognize that? It's a Greek word.
Yeah.
It's a Greek word for God.
It's theos for
It's
God.
pronounced theos, that's right.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's intelligent design very clearly there. And as well, you can see, like, if there's an inscription on the wall with Egyptian hieroglyphics, then that's going to be something that indicates intelligent design.
That's right.
Now, if you see something chiseled on the wall, like a person, this person here has been chiseled by an intelligent artist.
Obviously, that didn't happen by chance.
It didn't happen by chance. It wasn't caused by wind erosion. It wasn't caused by rain erosion.
Right.
Likewise, if you see columns up on the wall here, that's not caused by an earthquake that shook some stones loose and shoved them up out of the ground.
No.
Somebody put those stones that way, and somebody put another stone on top of the columns. So you can see that intelligence is very clear here, right? Now, what about SETI science?
Tell people what that is.
Well, I was going to ask you, are you familiar with SETI?
We tell them what it means. I know what it means.
SETI
but tell our
means
viewers.
Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And there are actually scientists who use radio telescopes to look for signs of intelligence in outer space today. And what they want to listen for is for radio waves that indicate something about intelligence. Now, I know I don't draw very good radio waves, but nevertheless, what they're listening for is for signs of intelligence. For example, if they heard a pattern of prime numbers, that would indicate intelligence.
Right.
Now, do you know what a prime number is?
It's a number, a divisible number by
itself or
Yes.
the number 1. For
Okay.
example, the number 7. The number 7 is only divisible by itself or the number 1.
Okay.
And there's lots of numbers just like that. 11 would be another example.
All right.
So if you had a series of those kinds of numbers being heard by the SETI scientists, they would look at each other and say, there must be an intelligent cause here, you see. So far, no luck.
Yeah.
They've spent virtually tens of millions of dollars, and they haven't heard anything in terms of intelligence out there. Now, we often detect intelligent design in our travels around the world. Now, you've probably been around the world, right?
I have somewhat. I've spent a good bit of time in India, and
Okay.
I'm looking at your examples there, and I know I see a couple from Egypt and one from Great Britain, I assume.
Well, yes, you see Stonehenge,
Right.
which is in England.
Right.
And obviously that doesn't look like it just popped up out of the ground.
No.
You know, it's a semicircle, and you've got another stone slab on top of it. And most scientists and people who have investigated this think it was probably used for sun worship.
Right.
You see, so it's an intelligently designed
Someone
thing.
built it, designed it, and then built it.
That's right. Now, I'm sure that you recognize
We got
this
the Sphinx
pharaoh
there.
here.
Yeah.
It's a sphinx, and you can see that there's detail on the eye and the nose and the mouth. There's a big beard here.
Incredible feat.
You know, that's not rain erosion.
No.
That's not wind erosion. And how about this pyramid? It doesn't look like it here, but this is actually about 50 stories tall.
Wow.
That's a huge pyramid.
Amazing.
And scientists have investigated this, and they have found that the sides of the pyramid are almost equal to each other, which is an amazing feat for an ancient culture. And there's also passageways inside, including the pharaoh's chamber, and that's where he was buried. They would put him there, and then they'd also write inscriptions on the wall, and basically they'd be giving him instructions on how he should behave in the afterlife. You know, as if that really does any good, but
Yeah.
that's what they believed. Now, I think you can see that where we're going with all of this.
I do.
We're starting to see intelligent design everywhere. If you're driving down somewhere in South Dakota and you come across 4 presidents' faces chiseled into the side of a granite mountain, chances are you're not going to think that that's wind erosion or rain erosion. In fact, I'm sure you can recognize George Washington, and you've got Abraham Lincoln, and you've got Theodore Roosevelt with his mustache there. You've got Thomas Jefferson here.
It's not hard to tell the difference, is there?
Well, no, not. But if you look into, like, the Grand Canyon,
Right.
there's a difference, right?
Right.
I mean, that looks like it was naturally caused. But this involved intelligent design. What about a skywriter? Have you ever been walking down the street one day and you look up in the sky and you see the words, "Free concert in the park tonight"? You think that's a random cloud formation? Probably not. It's probably a skywriter, and this skywriter's job is to write words in the sky.
Right.
Now let's get to the gist of it.
All right.
Let's talk about detecting intelligent design. Now, I've used a mousetrap as an illustration, and you can see that this mousetrap has a number of components. It's got a wooden platform, it's got a spring, it's got a hammer, and there's even a little piece of cheese on there that you see. And all of these components work together to accomplish a purpose. And I want you to remember a particular phrase: irreducible complexity. Sounds like a big word, doesn't it? But all it means is that it's complex in the sense that it has many interacting parts. It's irreducible in the sense that all the parts are necessary for it to work. So if you pulled out the spring, what would happen?
You take any part away and it doesn't work.
That's right. And so therefore, if we can recognize irreducible complexity in anything, that would show an intelligent design, an intelligent cause. And I want you to just keep that concept in mind. For example, consider the eyeball. Look at all the parts that the eye has. You've got an iris and a pupil. You've got the retina in the back and an optic nerve that goes up to the brain. In fact, this is a very complex organ. And all of these parts work together to enable vision. Now, I have to tell you that Charles Darwin said that the eyeball gave him a cold shudder. Do you know why he said that? He said that because he knew that his theory really couldn't explain it. You know, here you have the pupil, which determines how much light goes in. You've got the light going back here. It hits the retina right here. And then it's translated into the optic nerve, which goes up to the brain. And all of this works in perfect synergy in order to enable vision. Evolution cannot explain it. This has every evidence of being designed by an intelligent engineer.
In fact, we would be illogical if we looked at the mousetrap and said that had to have a designer, and then looked at the eyeball and said, well, that just happened by chance, wouldn't we?
You're exactly
We're not being consistent when we do that.
You know, another example is the wing.
All right.
You know, I really like this eagle right here. If you look at those majestic wings, you've got, you know, muscles involved, bones involved, feathers involved, flesh involved. You've got a synergistic relationship between the wings and the eagle's brains, his built-in intuition regarding how to fly. All of these things work together in order to enable flying. And therefore, we call that irreducible complexity. And Darwinism cannot explain it.
No.
That's intelligently designed, and that designer had to be God himself. Now, let's talk a little bit about Darwin. Natural selection was the theory that Darwin set forth, and he said that natural selection is unguided, unsupervised, mindless, and purposelessness. It can't account for the highly complex eye or wing. Now, here's what I'm trying to say. How would evolution possibly understand at each small step along the way whether or not to keep a small, minuscule part in the front of the face that would one day, in billions of years, become an eye? And how would evolution know how to put all these parts together after it was created and make it into an eyeball? Natural selection simply cannot explain it. What about molecular machines? Do we see intelligent design there? I'm sure you recognize this, right?
I do.
Scientists have now understood and determined that there are molecular machines that can involve themselves in information storage and data transfer, sorting and delivery. That's an important one right there. And it's far too complex for evolution to explain. In fact, if I could just give you an example, one of the things that we can use as an example is a car coming out of a garage door. If you can imagine a garage door opening and a car pulling out, and then that car's got a bunch of supplies in it and drives down the street, turns left, goes down about a mile, and then another garage door opens in a house, and the car drives in, and then all the supplies in the car are delivered to individual rooms in that house, well, that's a pretty amazing thing when you consider that that's exactly what we see at the molecular level. You see, what we are seeing is little molecular machines with data transfer being taken from one side of the cell to the other. So that's intelligent design, and Darwinism simply cannot explain it. Now, what about the information in DNA?
Let's talk about DNA.
DNA refers to the cells that have the blueprints for life. If you can just remember blueprints for life, I think that that will help you to understand what we're talking about. In each cell of DNA, what we have is enough data to fill 4 different copies of the Encyclopedia Britannica. And you got to keep in mind that there's 30 volumes in the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Each cell contains
Each single
that much
cell.
information.
Now the question is, where did that information come from?
Yeah. You know, Ron, it's not just in the molecular world of DNA that we see intelligent design, but when you look at the big picture of the universe, we see some design there too, don't we?
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, if you look at these pictures up here, the size of our moon is perfect. And the reason that I say it's perfect is that because if the moon was any larger, we'd actually have tidal waves.
Instead, we have tides.
That's right. We have tides, and that's what we want. We want to have tides. The distance from the sun is exactly equal to what it should be. If we were any closer to the sun, what would happen? Well, obviously,
we'd fry.
We'd fry. And if we were further from the sun, it would be too cold to sustain life. Furthermore, there is just enough oxygen. It's almost like some kind of a chemist, mixed it out in perfection for the existence of life on planet Earth. And so the bottom line is that Earth is tailor-made for life. And that applies to everything I've just said, too. At the molecular level with those little molecular machines, it's tailor-made. When you look at the bird's wing, it's tailor-made for flying. When you look at the human eyeball, it's tailor-made for seeing. When you look at our universe, it is tailor-made for the existence of life. Now, it's one thing for us as Christians to be talking about this, right? But it's another thing to find out what astronomers are saying about all of this. And let me just point out a couple of things to you. Astronomer Robert Jastrow made the following comment. If the universe had not been made with the most exacting precision, we could never have come into existence. It is my view that these circumstances indicate the universe was created for man to live in. Now, this is an astronomer with a PhD.
Right.
Okay? We can look at what another astronomer says, Frederick Hoyle, who says that it appears that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as with chemistry and biology. In other words, the more he studies, the more he sees evidence for an intelligent designer.
Little play on words there, but clearly he's making the point that God has made this as a place where we could live.
Yes, it's just ideal for human life. And then, of course, there's astronomer George Greenstein who says, he asks if it's possible that we have stumbled upon scientific proof for the existence of a supreme being. Now, Don, I want to tell you that there's many astronomers and scientists today who are actually coming to faith in Christ, not as a result of reading the Bible, but as a result of looking at the evidence in creation and finding out that there is actual evidence, scientific evidence, for the existence of an intelligent designer in our world.
Friends, we have to take a break, and we'll be back in a minute, but I want you to hear Ron share with us from God's Word that this idea of intelligent design has been around since David, and we just have a lot more evidence to show it's true now. So hang with us through the break, and we'll be right back. God bless you.
Creation versus evolution. You weigh the evidence. Honeybee technology. What's the buzz about? Honeybees fly with incredible agility that's the envy of all stunt pilots. Their navigation software is packed into a brain the size of a sesame seed. Bees have airspeed gauges, gyroscopes, a sophisticated compass, UV sensors to track the horizon, and 2 compound eyes, each with 7,000 sub-eyes. Scientists have yet to design or build anything remotely comparable. Can the honeybee be a product of random chance processes? Today's guest on Origins, Ron Rhodes, is also the author of several books, including The 10 Things You Should Know About the Creation versus Evolution Debate. You'll definitely want this book for your personal library. Book orders are being taken at 214-618-0912. Ron Rhodes is also the president of Reasoning from the Scriptures and has authored other books and articles. For more information, write to Reasoning from the Scriptures Ministries, P.O. Box 2526, Frisco, Texas 75034. Or visit their website at www.ronrhodes.org.
You know, Ron, as we think about all of this, you've really given us scientific evidence in DNA and in looking at the universe. It seems to me that the people of God have always believed in intelligent design because we've known the designer, the creator.
Yes.
There's a beautiful passage in Psalm 19 that you've used in your book and in your outline. Would you read that for us, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
I'd love to. In fact, this is one of my favorite Psalms all time.
Yeah.
Psalm 19, verses 1 to 4, which says, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they display knowledge. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard. Their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world." That pretty much says it, doesn't it?
I love especially the first phrase, that the heavens declare the glory of God. You have to not want to see God in all the things that have been made to miss him, don't you?
You know, the scientists tell us that when you go outside at night and you look straight up at the sky, you can see about 3,000 stars with the unaided eye. Now, back in California, where I used to live, you can only see about 30 of them. But in Texas, where I now live, you can see 3,000, and it is glorious.
Yes, it is.
You cannot look at the universe without understanding that there was an intelligent designer. And just now, just recently, the scientists are now catching up, understanding that indeed, you know, our universe is just perfectly tuned and fine-tuned for the existence of life.
Now, if you were someone who didn't want to believe that, if you're committed heart and soul to the evolutionary cause, how do you argue against this overwhelming evidence that we're seeing?
Well, it's not easy to do, although there are some evolutionists who are attempting to do so. What some evolutionists are now saying is, well, you know, there is the problem of evil in our world. For example, we've got...
I agree with that. There is a problem with evil in this world.
I mean, they look at the crime rate.
That's
they
right.
look at, you know, death and disease around the world. Even young children can get diseases and die at a very young age. And so some of these evolutionists are saying, well, how do you explain the problem of evil if there is a good, intelligent designer like God? If there was a good, intelligent designer, wouldn't there be no such thing as the problem of evil? And so this is one of the things that they're now throwing at us. But you know what? There's a good answer to that.
There sure is.
Well, for one thing, why should we blame God on what we're responsible for?
Right.
God is not the one who caused evil in our universe. We human beings did that. You know what evil really is? Evil is the absence of something good. For example, rot cannot exist unless there's a good tree. Tooth decay cannot exist unless there's, first of all, a good tooth. You can't have a moth hole in a garment until you've got a good garment. Well, in the same way, the original created earth was a good earth. Remember in Genesis 1:31, God said everything that he created was good. And so something happened between then and now to make the world not good.
Christians have given away the store when we just accept evolution without looking at the truth of creation, haven't they?
Well, I think that's true. And I think it's time for Christians to stop cowering in fear when evolutionists come forward and say that the evidence is on our side. The reality is that for the first time, the evidence is on the side of the Christian. It's not that it's never been there before. It's just that we haven't had the technology to understand and to investigate it.
And so the first group of people that we have to convince of the truth of creation is our Christian brothers and sisters. Because until they're willing to take a stand, the world's never going to hear us.
Well, that's right. And, you know, one of my goals in writing the book that I've written is to help Christians understand some of these critical issues so that they can go forth with the evidence.
That's right.
You know, you've got the fossil evidence, you've got the DNA evidence, you've got the intelligent design evidence. All across the board, we've got scientific evidence that indicates that creationism is true. And let me mention one thing to you. Don't ever let an evolutionist get away with telling you that creationism is just a faith system, whereas evolution is scientific fact. Let's be clear that evolution is a faith system.
It certainly is.
Nobody was there to watch alleged non-life emerge into life. Nobody was there to watch simple life forms evolve into complex life forms like they claim. It is a faith system. So the critical issue is, which system has the evidence on its side? and I think it's creationism.
And I think you're right. And we want to thank you for being with us. You've been a great guest, and you've given us a lot to think about.
Thank you.
I just want to say to our audience today that it's been great having you with us. You've been watching Origins, and if you have questions and things that you would like us to talk about, or questions you would like to have answers, you can write to us at Origins, Cornerstone Television, Wall, PA, 15148, or you can email us there at the address on the screen, and we're glad to interact with you and to deal with the questions that you have. I just want you to remember most of all that, it's God's view that he created us, and that ought to be your worldview too. I look forward to you being with us next time as we look further into the truth of creation as it's validated by the evidence of science. God bless you.
Thank you for watching this edition of Origins. If you'd like a copy of the information presented today, you can download a PDF file of program number 449 from our website at www.originstv.org. For a printed version, send a $5 donation to cover shipping and handling to Cornerstone Television, Wall, Pennsylvania, 15148.